All right, let's go with the fall athletic summary. Art, welcome. Thank you for participating tonight in our
Yep.
meeting.
So what I'll do, I will do this 3 times a year. We'll do it again either March or April, and then May or June, probably depending on where we are in the playoffs and things like that. I don't believe the memo got to you on Friday, but I think it was put in the board packet today.
Today, and then we also have
So
a hard copy out there.
basically, the memo was to possibly answer any questions that you had on the data that I provided. Without going through the whole thing, the first paragraph of the memo just describes the athletic summary page on why there might be, if you have some questions on why, why don't we have freshman standings for soccer or girls volleyball? That's because they're not actually we don't have a full conference schedule because some of our conference schools don't have that level, so we don't have a standing for them. And not all of our teams make the IHSA playoffs, so that's why they don't have their standing on there. The next part, the second document, illustrated the impact of pay to participate. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to look at student population and the percentage of kids that participated that year, because without knowing the amount of kids in the school, the numbers could be skewed a little bit. So in the small box there, I provided you with the enrollment for 2010, which was 1446. We had 443 athletes participate in the fall sports, so that's 30.6% of our students were participating then. So when we started with the pay to participate $75 fee, in 2011, we had 1469 was our fall enrollment. 395 athletes participated, so that came to 26.9%. So you'll see the initial drop off when we added the pay to participate. So now when we changed from 75 to 200 this year, at our fall enrollment, we were at 1448. 381 students participated in a fall sport, so we dropped 0.6% in the fall. And we'll get in more detail of where maybe those athletes, we had a little bit of a shift, and I'll explain, I think, where that occurred in a little bit. But also at the bottom, one of the things we noticed, and I've worked with Tim and the people in the business office to kind of come up with the best way to do the pay to participate, being last year being it new. We were trying things and seeing how to work through it. So when we did the numbers, when we get there, we did have kind of a wacky number in the sense of the kids that we had down as waived. We weren't sure how to report it, meaning what could the coaches see, what could I see, what could the business office actually put out there. So I think some of the kids on there might not be waived. It might be they were put somewhere else and we couldn't get to them. So the number's a little off, but that's what I indicated in there. And then the other thing is the business office has established this year really 3 ways to pay with your pay to participate. The half at the beginning, the 200 or full, half at the beginning and then halfway through, 200, the full amount, or they have, and Tim can probably speak more on this because I don't know the actual details if there's different plans, but family payment plans of taking the whole fees from the school and then they've broken it down. So when we look at the numbers of what's been collected to this point, that's why you can't divide it by 100 because somebody might have turned in $75 this month. So it's a little hard to track, so we can't. But all the kids now, all the students, we've set it up so that once our teams are picked, the athletic department sends that roster to the business office. They then plug that in and put a fee to each one of those students, and then they can track it easier that way, so everyone's accounted for. And then I can look at it and see who's on a payment plan, who's been waived, who's paid full, and then that's what I send out to the coaches, and then they can, who's eligible and who's not eligible.
So when you send it to the coaches, just say who's eligible and who's not?
Yeah, just say these following students have not paid to this point. They can't participate until they have half the money in or be set up on a payment plan with the business office, yeah. So they don't ever get any of that, the full of waived or this, that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So that was the memo purpose, to kind of maybe answer some questions on the numbers. Yes, Mr. King.
Oh, I was going to wait till you were finished,
okay.
but I'll wait.
So what I'll do real fast, I won't go through every thing on the summary sheet, but I did want to highlight, what each group did.
Oh, okay.
oh,
I'd like to ask a question about your statistics there. I noticed that some of these things are way off the charts. Like girls cross country went down 60% or 70%.
Oh, do you want to talk about this This
Oh, are
page?
we there? Yeah.
The
Okay.
numbers.
The
Yeah,
numbers
before
page?
you get to the performance, that's more fun.
Okay. Well, I was going to start with that and go to that, but we can go.
But just a real, is there any reason for these pretty substantial shifts in participation among sports? To lose almost 70% in cross-country in the same year that you've gained 60% in swimming.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, a couple reasons we think. One, yeah, when you look at the numbers, the biggest impact on our sports have been the cross country in the fall, and it's a no-cut sport. And what we've realized over the years is sometimes we'll get athletes to come out to those sports to maybe get in shape for future sports or just try it. And I think we've lost those kids that just want to come out for fun. And what happens is they come out and they enjoy it and they like it and they stick with it. So we've lost some of those athletes that are 2 or 3 sport athletes that run cross country to start with, that they didn't come out the last 2 years.
Yeah.
That's what we're thinking.
Yeah,
So that's,
they all went to swimming.
well, in girls swimming, historically, and this might sound a little odd, but historically, whenever there's an Olympic year,
Ah,
there's more participation in those sports.
all right.
So I'm not going to say that's
I'll
why we
take
jumped.
that as the
But
reason.
that is, so yeah, when you look
Doesn't
at,
explain cross.
we didn't drop a whole lot, but some of our sports were definitely impacted more than others. The no-cut sports are always going to have the numbers, but what you don't see is the amount of kids that actually try out.
All
So
right.
instead of having 50 kids try out and we keep 25, we might only have 35 and we keep 25.
So I'll assume that the swimming was the Ryan Lochte effect.
Yeah.
All right, good.
So, yeah, since we're on the numbers, and that was what I was going to point out, is some of you can see some of our sports have been impacted more than others, where others have gone up slightly. For whatever reason that might be, it's kind of hard to tell after the first or 2 years even.
I have a question on the numbers too, so a couple, and then you can probably answer them quickly. The $200 pay to play, is that per sport?
Yeah, it's per sport, per athlete.
So do we see a decrease in number of athletes that play in multiple sports?
To be determined, really. I mean,
Okay.
with the 75, there wasn't that many. I have to go back, I think I gave those numbers at a previous board meeting of
Okay.
our 2 sports and 3 sport athletes, but with the 200, we'll have to see
So we
with
may
the winter
be,
and the spring and see where we're at.
That's why we wanted to track it.
right, so we may be seeing some students who are picking, one over another, and that's why we
Right.
may see a shift. It does seem odd that when the costs went up, though, the number of
Went
waived
down.
went
Yeah, and that-
significantly down.
Right, and we looked at, because those numbers don't seem right, but I think it was how we tracked it and what I could view and what I could pull up
Okay.
and where they put them. Tim might be able to speak more. I think we've figured it out now this year of how to track it specifically.
Okay.
So we might have kids on here that we say waived, that weren't waived, but they're just somewhere, they were put
We gotta
somewhere else.
remember in the fall, last year fall, we made that decision in like August. And then we started to collect it, so we were behind on how we were gonna collect it, how we were gonna record it, how we were gonna waive it. Then it got a little better in the winter, and then we
Yeah,
thought.
now everybody is
lot tighter.
kind of tagged at the beginning once they're on there, and then either identified waived, you're on a payment plan, you either haven't paid yet, and the business office will send a bill, or you've paid in full and you're eligible and ready to go.
So really, it'll probably take the full year to see the impact of this.
Correct,
and-
yeah.
Because we may be having students who are picking a favorite sport in lieu of doing
Correct.
multiple sports.
And the sports that are going to be impacted are non-cut sports,
Okay,
because you're gonna have, you
right.
know, the same amount for every, the other sports you're just gonna cut down, but you don't know how many kids have actually tried out for that.
We would
Right.
probably need to track this for 2 years to
Probably
get a
so.
true analysis.
Unless we look at the 2 years we already have, where we had a 14% drop from the first year when we didn't have it. The biggest drop was last year. There
Right.
wasn't much of a change. So what it might indicate is the families who had trouble, they decided when it was $75, they weren't going to do it, and of course, they weren't participating again. So there's a couple things I would ask. If you are a believer that, the value of the education and what kids get out of it in the school has a lot to do with how much participation they have here, should we again, we could wait 2 more years and then some kids will miss playing sports all 4 years, or we could see if you have some recommendations, either overall, or maybe there should be, we talked about before, different rates for different sports. You know, maybe cross-country, that costs a hell of a lot less than football, should have a lower fee so that kids come out and participate. Is that something that you're
Well,
thinking about?
we'd certainly, meet and look at all the different possibilities, if that's something we want to go, because there's a lot of schools out there that do it that way.
And we
where
know,
they
because you
break it
gave
down.
us,
Yeah,
reams of data on it. That was one way people
Yeah.
do it, and we know we're at the high, but I'd say we already have some information.
Mhm. Oh,
I'd say
yeah.
for fall sports, we've dropped almost 14% from when we didn't charge to what we do charge. And is that something that we want to continue? I mean, because if we already had the impact, it's gonna stay the same, and if we keep tracking, it's gonna show there's no change. But
Right.
the change really may have come the first time we did it.
well, yeah, the initial one was like a 4%, almost like 4%,
right?
not a 14, 4%.
30.6
Went from
to
30.6 to
26.9.
26.9.
I would.
It went from
I-
443 to 381 this year, which is 62 people, which is 14%.
But look at the,
Well,
You gotta
Of
go
which-
from enrollment
Gotta
though,
look at
because
the
if your
enrollment, though,
enrollment
too.
goes down from last year,
Of which cross-country, the two cross-countries team took 50% of that cut, and football, which tends to be a, it's really like a no cut the freshman year, isn't it? Typically, they allow
oh, it's
every-
no cut.
Yeah.
We actually went up in football enrollment this year.
So,
We went up
but I
by
mean, it
4
cut from
students.
the first year out from 130, now it's to 116.
Right.
So you're gonna have people who say, I'm never gonna be able to play, I'm never playing, I probably just won't go out. I think you, as you said, you need to do the analysis on the cross-country, see if they were truly two sport participants that were just trying to get in shape. I mean, I see it's girls cross-country. I'm
Did
trying to
too.
anticipate what that would be in lieu, in advance of basketball, and they chose not to do it. We don't,
Right.
as opposed to speculate and to come with a revenue, to start speculating what we should do for revenue, we probably should know the real reason what caused the drop in cross-country.
Okay,
I
but-
can understand the first year where we cut the coach down to one, but we brought back
Right. we're
two
back.
coaches now,
Right.
so that there'd be the safety factor in place, so.
Okay, but I want to make my point again, because everybody correct me and tell me what I'm doing wrong, because it was diluted. There were 1,446 students in the fall of 2010, and there were 443 fall athletes according to your schedule, right? Did I read that right?
right.
There were 1,448 students this year, which is two different. And there were 381 students in fall sports. If you go from 443 to 381, it's a drop of 62 students, and 62 is 14% of 443.
I didn't look at it from the enrollment standpoint. I looked at it from, it's primarily the cross-country teams is 50% of that loss. And as you think, but we don't have hard numbers.
We'd have to look at
The thing
the-
is
yeah.
that they were two-sport or three-sport
We'd have to
athletes
look at the
trying to get in shape,
rosters.
but we should,
Yeah, we'd have to
as
look at the
opposed to
rosters.
speculate, we should know the
and
hard
see-
facts.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I mean, I've met with the coaches and we've discussed other things of what, and that's our initial thing, but we can really take a hard look if we look at the rosters and look what other sports they play. We know who ran last year that might not have come out this year and why, we have to look at that.
So Art, let me ask you a question. Because of the pay-to-play in, and maybe some students not taking it because they're gonna have to pay for that sport, are we seeing an increase of after-school workouts or activities? You know what I mean, non-sport wise? The weight room or youth gym or anything?
Well,
We don't have that open.
Okay.
So what we have seen an increase in, and that will be reported in January, is the student activities. So a lot of the few activities that are free, we've seen a huge increase in student association compared to some of our other clubs or activities where now they're $100. But once again, this is, when we cut a lot of, prior to my arrival, when a decision was made to cut a lot of those activities and wipe them out completely, we heard feedback from the community that it would have been easier to do a pay to participate for clubs in some of these sports. Then last year when we brought about, cutting some sports, we had a large outturn about keeping every sport. So, I mean, we have to let this whole year play out, maybe possibly 2 years to see, unless we found some additional revenue and we would look at the 200 and see if that's a fair price. I don't know until, when it was free, it's hard to compare something when it's free to then to 200. That's a significant.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see the whole year through, where you have person
how
in
it
fall
compares.
sports, and then you have a person in the spring, and if there's a major drop-off there
So
because of the,
let me build on Gary's comment. So here's, you got fall, winter, and spring. The number of sports and athletes, more in the fall, more in the winter, or more in the spring?
There's more in the fall and the spring, less in the winter, there's less sports.
Okay.
Right now, looking at the numbers, I think we dipped a little bit in the winter, but you have gymnastics and you have wrestling that are no-cut sports. Girls basketball, boys basketball, you're gonna have the same number every year. That's not gonna, and boys swimming, I think we've stayed the same. We might have dropped a little bit, I think we're at like 41. I don't remember off the top of my head where we were last year, but, we'll know more in the spring, because you have some, like track. Well, before we had 90-some kids come out for track, I don't think we'll be that high, and that will be we came out to do it, as our third sport, our second sport, and unfortunately, I don't think we'll get that, and that's where we'll see a bigger dip in numbers in our spring sports.
They aren't. Here's proof that they just went to other sports. I think women are fickle. They decide on a different sport within the year. It was 159 female participants in 2011. 2012, there were 160. One more, but it was so close. So it doesn't seem to have had any effect on at least the young women participants.
As far as the math, 62 divided by 1448 is 4.3. So maybe you're missing a.
All right, do you have anything else?
so we should get Art to talk about the achievements of the sports programs.
Can I
go
take
for the
a
highlights
on
real
achievements, please?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not done, Matt. You got to look around and give everyone a chance. Just
All
a suggestion. I want to echo sort of what Gary said, and being a cross-country person and everything. Maybe we need to adjust our fee policy, because the goal is revenue, but that's really not the only goal. The other goal is participation. I think you'd agree with that. I think a tiered payment system, looking into that in some fashion, and maybe if you go off for a second sport, the fee drops by half or minimal, because actually in the long run, that second sport, if people aren't going out, you could actually you lower the price for it, you actually get more participation, the revenue wouldn't drop as much. So I think maybe looking at those two ideas is worthwhile, maybe sooner than later, but just an idea.
Well, and we have talked about that of.
We're
there's a lot of
our
schools that-
first season into something you guys passed in April or May, so we probably should watch this play out a little bit. I'm not listen, I'm all for, I think the key to a good education is just as much to do outside the classroom as inside the classroom. But we would probably want to let this run a cycle at least.
Maybe
And
we
maybe
should talk
visit it
about
in
it
the spring.
in May, before, if we have to make an adjustment
Art,
before
Because
next.
On our
we'd
co-
have better numbers then to really
Yeah.
really to see it.
In our conference, everybody increased, or if they didn't have pay to play, they went to pay to play? Is that a true
Good
statement?
question. I think there might only be one of our conference schools that is not pay to participate. Everybody else does have some type of fee.
Did they increase last year to this year?
I'd have to check. I think everybody went up slightly.
Okay. All right, so let's go to what we did this year.
So yeah, I won't go through all the bullet points, but just point out, one or two from each one. Girls cross country, we won the regional again this year. Eight that sectional. We did have one. Claire was our state qualifier this year. Boys cross country, I believe this is our third or fourth regional championship. We took sixth at the sectional, just missing out to qualify for a team. We had Kevin qualified for state. Boys soccer, we won conference this year, second year in a row. We won a regional, and we lost in the sectional final game, which we had never gotten that far before. So they had one of their most successful seasons. Boys football, we were fourth, 2-2 in the MSC, and our lower levels were both 3-1. Boys golf, we took sixth at the regional. Austin made it to the sectional. But unfortunately didn't make it to the state. But girls golf, we continue to improve. We took fifth at the regional. All of our girls, kept getting better and better as the year went on. Girls swimming, we took fifth at the sectional this year. We had one state qualifier in Sydney. Took 52nd in the 100. Our girls tennis, was fourth at the MSC and took a couple first place finishes and a couple different invites. And our girls volleyball team finished third in the MSC, and we lost in the regional final. One thing to note with girls volleyball, this was the first year we got bumped up a class. We're in the highest class now for girls volleyball, as well as boys and girls track and boys and girls basketball this year. So they lost in a 3-game match to Hinsdale South, which was the #1 seed. So it was very, very competitive for them. So that was good. Also listed on there is any of our athletes that made all conference, but I won't go through all of those, but you can see that. So, I mean, overall, it was a very successful fall season again. We're looking forward to the winter season, and we had a lot going on tonight. We had a gymnastics meet going on right now. We have a boys basketball game going on. Our girls are over at Glenbard South basketball right now, so I'm waiting to have my phone go off to see how they did. So, but
Any other questions for Art?
Art, any update on the conference?
no. As you all know, West Chicago was in, and then I think unfortunately they didn't come in for the right reasons, and we ended up meeting as a conference and decided that we weren't going to let them in. So we are still actively looking. We send stuff out or try to talk to ADs as much as possible and see. There's a big shift right now, so hopefully in the next couple of years there will be some schools that we can attract to our conference and expand. But right now we're back to the holding pattern that
Are
we've
there
been
any
in.
schools that are interested or approached us at all yet?
Nothing specific, but I think there will be in the next, with all these schools kind of moving, there's openings and then there's people that are looking to leave. So I think there will be some movement in the next 2 or 3 years, and hopefully we'll get some schools into our conference.
Okay. Any other questions for Art? Thank you very much, Art.
Thank you, Art.
Thanks, Art.
Appreciate it.